back to Zoëthopia. We believe that knowledge is power. My name's Zoë Robertson. I am here to empower you through knowledge and motivation, and I'm not a professor. Let's get to learning. And in today's video, we are learning about one of my favorite subjects, which are DC movies and just the DC universe in general. This is my official review of the Batman 2022 movie, and I basically structured it into like looking at Robert Pattison as the Batman, Paul Dano as the Riddler, and then sort of like two of the main villains besides the Riddler, which is Colin Farrells as the Penguin and Turtorros as Falcone. And then I'm gonna take a look at Zoë Kravitiz and her Catwoman before in general just taking a look at the movie, like the things I didn't like and then the things that I did like and why I think you should watch this movie. I did title this video why you should watch this movie or why you should watch Batman 2022, whatever, because I really did enjoy the movie, and I'm going to tell you why, but I'm going to try to like not spoil or anything, of course, but let's get into it. I'm also saying like my official review because I did do a couple of videos on it on TikTok, which if you like nerdy stuff, then definitely check out my TikTok. I did videos like just as Batwoman, so that should give you like a general sense of what I mean. But in this video, I'm like summing up all my points and trying to present them in a little more thought through manner. First of all, I think we were all excited just in general for a new Batman movie. We've had obviously like the whole Justice League universe and stuff that's been going on lately with Ben Affleck, but we haven't had a like Batman movie since 2012 when the Nolan trilogy ended, and Robert Pattison was announced as Batman a while ago, and I think we were all wondering like what that was going to be like. For me personally, I was very excited because I've always been honestly a huge fan of Twilight, but I've never really been a fan of Robert Pattison or his character or whatever, and I see him as like sort of a wayfish type, but I do know that he does like a darkness and moodiness very well. So in that sense, I wasn't like, oh, Robert Pattison is never going to be able to do good Batman. But honestly, I was so pleasantly surprised by his part, not only as Batman, but also as Bruce Wayne. And I think they really played into his like natural moodiness or whatever. And he also has like talked on and on in interviews and outlets about how much this part meant to him and how he like really didn't want to screw up Batman, and it shows. He has done his work. And I really think that this type of Batman and Bruce Wayne was perfect for Robert Pattison because this is a younger, more like sulky, broody Bruce Wayne. And it is so fun to see like a young Bruce Wayne, the young Batman. The only thing I can sort of compare to is Christian Bale in Batman Begins, but sort of like the beginning of Batman Begins. Like the hair and everything, like the overgrown schoolboy hair and everything matches. And it's really fun to see a Batman and a Bruce Wayne who hasn't like gotten used to everything, who isn't like growing wary, who takes everything really seriously and sort of very intensely and hasn't like got accustomed to how things are yet. So he just really cares and wants to like get through and everything. And as a Batman, it's really fun also because he is younger and more inexperienced, and so yeah, he throws some serious punches, but he also gets punched and like you can see him take a hit. Normally with Batman, he's a lot more skilled in defense as well, but this Batman is getting used to being in a real fight, and I think he's been Batman for 4 years, which is also a point that even though he is young, you don't see like the beginning and everything, just you go into it and he is Batman and he is sort of a menace to the criminal society of Gotham. You really get a sense of how frightening Batman is to everyone who's doing criminal activity. And you know, we've done the whole Batman backstory like over and over, and it is really nice to be able to just jump into it but still have him be like this young guy and still have it be like a full picture, like, oh, the Batman, you know, about the Batman, without having to go into like the whole, oh no, poor Bruce Wayne. You still touch upon it, but it's like just knowledge. It's just out there. And I think especially since they just did like the whole, like I said, the Ben Affleck thing where he's super established, it is fun to see this Batman who's doing like a really traditional Batman thing and who is known but is still trying to establish himself, his morals, his style, everything, and just growing into the Bat. And what I love about this Batman is also what I love about the movie in general, which is that it is very serious, it is very dark, and he is very serious, he is very dark, but he's also fun. And not necessarily that he himself has a lot of humor, but there are jokes, you know, on his expense and a lot of like goofy things that make sense, and it just makes the movie more enjoyable because, you know, movies that take themselves too seriously aren't necessarily that fun, but being able to balance the whole like this is serious and Batman is serious, but also like Batman is a person and this movie is a movie, and being able to have some fun with it is something that I really appreciate. The most well done character though, and probably what people are hyping the most around in this movie, is obviously the Riddler. Paul Dano did a great job and the character itself was written very well. I have never seen the Riddler like this ever in any movie, any comic, nothing. Like, this is the scariest, most intimidating, most real life like Riddler. Not only isn't he like super goofy walking around in like a green suit with the question marks and whatever, like he has a more grim appearance, but just his personality, his vibe, the way he goes about things just screams honestly like incel, alt-right, shooter vibes. It's like really like close to real life threats and the things that are scary today in our society, particularly with the internet and with the growing loneliness because of how more and more of our life becomes online because of like industrialization, whatever, this whole process that's been going on, and just how they managed to take the most comic-y of the villains almost and make him, with his personality, with his intelligence, with his riddles, into almost a real life terrorist and like internet terrorist. It is terrifying and so well done. And not only this like very modern part, but also the Riddler's appearance. Like when you see the Riddler for the first time, it is like in those real life videotapes where like a killer, like a serial killer is revealed and you see there's just like their like hollow existence and their eyes and their glasses and their greasy hair and everything. Like he looks like a serial killer 100%, like a stereotypical. Like if you saw Paul Dano as the Riddler in a tape that was supposed to look like they caught a real serial killer, we'd believe it. It is hard to compare this Riddler to other Riddlers because he is so dark and gritty, but I will say this is the scariest Riddler, and this might be the best Riddler on film. I mean, I love the like Jim Carrey Riddler and everything, but like I said, it's sort of apples and oranges because it is such a big difference. But the acting, the writing, the costume design, everything is just like, this is a person to be afraid of. It's done so well. And on to the other villains of this movie, which are entirely different. Much more classic, much more like strictly Gotham-like mafia, which are Falcone, or Falcone if you will, and Penguin, which are played by respectively John Turturro and Colin Farrell, which is also a person who was so anticipated in this movie. Colin Farrell, I think we all saw pictures and everything of like all the prosthetics and how different he was supposed to look, and he was almost unrecognizable. You take this like traditionally like attractive man and just make him into this grotesque figure along with a grotesque personality. It is well done and honestly a thing that created a lot of fuss around the movie, so it's a really good move as well. And these characters also tie into like one of the things I respect and love about this movie so much, which is that it takes on a lot of the biggest and most important characters, not just in DC in general, but like specifically Gotham characters. You have the Batman, you have Catwoman, Penguin, Falcone, Riddler, a lot of big names. As you've probably seen surfacing around the internet, they're going to tackle the Joker also moving on, which is something that I wasn't entirely sure that they would do after Suicide Squad and the Joker, but I'm really glad they're doing it. And I think this is a really bold move that so far definitely has paid off, and getting into this really organized type of crime, not just necessarily like, in the Nolan trilogy you have a lot of big names, but most of them are like more like erratic criminals, especially like with the Joker, which was the main villain and is always Batman's main villain. But in this one, looking at the Riddler, which is now like the intelligent or most intelligent of the villains, as well as like organized crime, Falcone, Penguin, like mob bosses. Going into this really also allowed us to see the detective side of Batman, which is something that I think we forget a lot. We see a lot like Batman using others' intelligence, having his gear created and like working with the police force and beating up bad guys, but we forget that Bruce Wayne is incredibly intelligent as well and does a lot of detective work and a lot of thoughts go on like his process and whatever he does. And this movie really showcases Bruce Wayne, or Batman if you will, as a detective, and that is mainly because he has to respond to these villains, Riddler and the mob. And the Penguin and Falcone are just so perfectly just sleazy and easy to dislike. like Colin Farrell, obviously he has done sleazy characters before several times, and he is just good at everything he does. Like every time he plays a role, he plays it perfectly. I sense that he puts a lot into it. I hadn't seen as much from John Turturro personally, but his Falcone was just a Chad. I have to mention, he just always has these sunglasses. There are several sunglasses moments in the movie that the movie is worth seeing just for that. But him just like walking around like one of the most terrifying men in Gotham, having his nightclub and everything, walking around the nightclub with his sunglasses is one of those things that, I mean, they're just so corny about the movie that really is fun to me. And in general, they just showcase Gotham so well just within their own character, and seeing the whole like unraveling of the corruption and everything in Gotham. And this storyline in this movie is really, really fun and interesting. And it's like, you don't always know where it's heading. You yourself have to do work. And the same with the riddles. And I always love in a movie when you yourself are activated mentally and when you really want to try to figure something out. For me, that is a sign of like a good plot, a good character, and you are actually like, oh my god, let me think about this. This movie also stars Zoë Kravitz as Catwoman, and Catwoman has like always been one of my favorite characters if she's done correctly. And for me, there was no doubt ever that Zoë Kravitz would be a good fit for this part. Naturally, Zoë Kravitz has this like very alluring and kind of like shy and mysterious personality that really fits well with Selina Kyle, and she was a great Selina Kyle. And aesthetically, she really looks like what I think about when I think about Catwoman. And I think they did a really, really good job with designing her costume, not just as Catwoman, but also as Selina Kyle. And here she does work in a nightclub, and she has, you know, like the very, like, I haven't seen Euphoria, but as I understand it, like the glitter makeup and everything. And I don't think there's a shot of her that isn't cinematic and beautiful to look at. And my favorite part of this Catwoman is probably her fighting style. It is so enjoyable to watch her fight, and it's super enjoyable to see her and Batman fight, which is always something that's very fun because they have very different fighting styles, and you know, they have like complementing costumes. But you know, you have like a lot of fighting scenes with Batman, you have quite a few fighting scenes with Catwoman, and seeing their different fighting styles and itself, or like seeing them fight, and then when they have very different fighting styles, is something that is very enjoyable and is very fun. And you know, obviously when you produce a movie like this, people are going to go partially for the action, and fighting is very important. And for me, like, I'm not necessarily into just seeing a lot of people get punched in the face, but I do enjoy seeing like how the different characters fight and how much that actually relates to the character and plays on their strengths. And obviously Robert Pattison is a big guy, and in this movie he himself is like, oh, I was even like counting steps and everything. Like his body was perfectly sculptured for this movie. He was huge in this movie. I was like, can Robert Pattison be that huge? Yes, he can. So he was huge, Batman, really, really big. And then you have Zoë Kravitz, who's very petite. And obviously when you have like a person who's like, I don't know, like almost like close to 200 pounds, then you have like a 100-pound person, whatever, their fighting style has to be different. And I do feel like in general DC does that in a good way. Like they are able to see how a character does fight and how it would make sense, and not just for the character and their strengths, but also for the physique of the person. In Catwoman, you know, she does move like a cat, and she has a graceful way about her. I also think they made a very interesting backstory for her that is something that like you wait to discover more and more. And like, I didn't see it coming. And a lot of the times, especially, you know, when we have seen movie after movie after movie in a particular universe, like you do have a sense of like, okay, this is where you're gonna go with her backstory. And I didn't have that. I was very surprised, and I like that. And the story of how she and Batman like end up together, like working together, was also like very seamlessly integrated and 100% makes sense. However, what I felt like was most off about this movie was the romance between Catwoman and Batman, or Selina Kyle and Bruce. We all know that the bat and the cat, as they say here, usually end up together, and it is a good fit on paper. And honestly, I do feel like the characters and the actors had great chemistry, and I would have liked to see them end up together. But for me personally, and for my brother as well, who I watched the movie with, the romance felt very rash and very forced, and it was sort of uncomfortable. I was sort of confused the first time because I was like, why did they just kiss. Even though I did feel like they had chemistry, it just didn't feel like the right moment. This happened several times. I was like, it was awkward. And I would have loved to see them not rush it so much and to just be able to build up to like a great romance and to a fitting moment for them to show that they are romantically interested in each other. And I think that would have been easier to play on in the long run as well. They're like, oh, will they one day? Oh my God, they did, but will they again? Instead of just, oh, okay, they are attracted to each other. Obviously, they're attracted to each other. They're attracted people. They have a lot in common. They are sharing experiences together. But that doesn't necessarily mean they just feel the need to kiss someone out of the blue. And that part was a little disappointing to me. By now, I'm sure you've all heard also that there was like this cringe woke phrase in the movie. Every movie does this now. Every movie like has to show that, oh my God, we're so woke. We have been on Twitter. We have been on Instagram. I really wish they didn't do that. It wasn't like sprinkled throughout the movie or anything. It wasn't like a general theme. It's just like I feel with romance, just very out of place. Sort of took me out of it. I was like, oh, why would you like that? Doesn't even feel natural. And I'm sure it wasn't natural for Zoë Kravitz to say either, because like obviously she knows she's not like 50. She's, I don't know, 30. So that was like sort of like touched upon a pet peeve of mine and most of us today. And I feel like especially in regards to superhero movies, this has been a problem. And I think that for a lot of people, not for me personally, but for a lot of people, probably the biggest drawback is that the movie is so long. It's like, I think 2 hours and 56 minutes, so basically 3 hours. And there are definitely people who wouldn't watch it because of length. There are people who I personally didn't like ask to watch it because of length. And I just assumed like, okay, that would be too much to maybe like a lot of young people or older people who aren't that into Batman. I did have a friend say actually that she didn't want to watch it in the movies because she enjoys Batman, but not enough to like sit there for 3 hours and watch it. And I do get that, although I personally feel like the length, like it was perfect because there are a lot of threads that they would have to leave like unraveled if they were to make it like 2 hours. For example, they would have to take it up in another movie. And I love how conclusive the story is and how they were able to balance all these different elements or storylines. But I do completely understand anyone who wants it and watch a movie for 3 hours. For example, I personally feel like Interstellar is just too long, and I tried to watch it and I skipped out for like the hour in the middle, came back, and for me, like 3 hours in space is too much. So I get it. The last thing that I personally was bothered about with the movie sounds like a small thing, but like to me it's important, and to a lot of people I think, which is Bruce and Alfred's relationship. It didn't feel very warm and loving. It did feel more like a working relationship than usual. I don't know if maybe it was like the actors' chemistry or just how they wanted to write it now. Maybe they want to like focus more on it later in the like if they do a sequel, which they're gonna do. Or maybe it was to show that like Batman or Bruce is like, oh, very moody and like the whole parents thing. I don't know, but it was just sort of hard to sit through the scenes with them. For me, there weren't a lot, but I was just like, why is he being like that to Alfred? Alfred is the only person he has. And he does sort of have this moment of realization, but not necessarily. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. But honestly, we're spoiled because our last Alfred and their relationship was so perfect in the Nolan trilogy. So maybe it's just a comparison thing. Andy Serkis is great though. Obviously, we all know that. Like, he's a great actor. It's not that. It's just the relationship between them and the way it was written and the things that were said were just like uneasy. So onto like what I liked. I love the general darkness of the movie. I love that it's sort of like gritty underworld. Some people do have like a thing with it taking place mostly at night, but it makes sense because like Bruce does live a nocturnal lifestyle. It's like maybe like in the first line of the movie he says like, I live a nocturnal lifestyle, and like Doy, he's Batman, he's there when there's crime. He's graffitiing on the bank at 2 p.m. That makes no sense, you know? And it is a noir. But I do love that they made it very dark, very gritty, very noir, very realistic, but also had, like I said, like more comic-y things. Because me personally, in 2022, I miss some of like corniness from the old superhero movies, and they weren't afraid to like just have two men in tights walking around talking to criminals, being like, hey, stop it. This is ridiculous, you know, and it was really fun. And I love that they had some of that funness. I don't think that's the word, but we're rolling with it, that they had some of this funness in this movie. As I said, I also absolutely love that Batman is already Batman. I am very tired of seeing Bruce's parents die. It's very depressing, and not having to watch it is a win, honestly. And I do love that even though he's Batman, he is a younger Batman, like I said, with the fighting and with his like moodiness as Bruce, and he does have a sunglass moment also, just as he did in Twilight. I love that, it's very fun. And even though it is very creepy, I do love that the villains are very realistic, and that parts of the movie, even the extreme parts, feel like this can happen in real life to us. And having the Riddler as the main villain in such a serious and dark movie is awesome. I've always enjoyed the Riddler, and I've always just really believed in him as a character, and having him portrayed in this way and with this grave seriousness, like having him be this terrifying, is awesome. Like I absolutely love that, and I hope to see more from him and like other like meme characters like him, where they are just showing like what they can actually do. I also really enjoy not only that Batman gets to show his detective side, but also that we really see how Batman is his true form, and that he sort of uses this alias of Bruce Wayne. Even though this movie is called The Batman and focusing on the Batman, he is actually Bruce Wayne a lot of the movie, and it is just done in a really, really good way. And I do understand how people think like, oh, this is kind of an odd Bruce Wayne, like the way he dresses, the way he looks and everything. But I absolutely love this Bruce Wayne. I feel like he is very realistic with his situation. And yeah, I just love that that Batman really like, uses Bruce Wayne, and that you see Robert Pattison as Bruce Wayne a lot in the way he does it, and that he's so moody, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, you're still like super rich and everything. Like you don't have the worst life, you can smile, but it works. So why should you watch this movie? Probably because of all reasons I just mentioned. If you want more videos like this from me, then let me know. I have done a couple of videos on movies, and like 3 out of 4 of them have been on DC movies. DC is sort of like a passion of mine. It's always been like Catwoman was my first real hero, and that was like when I was like 3 or 4 or whatever. It's something that I feel a lot of passion for. So definitely let me know what you thought, and definitely watch the movie. See you soon. Bye.